Good morning. I'd like to call the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order. It is Monday, August 21st, 2017. It is now 8:31. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to ask Selectman Havers to lead us, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Charles. Item 2 is public forum, limited to 3 minutes on any agenda item. Anybody wishing to address the board? We have you on the agenda if you want to wait till then. Okay, thank you. Anybody? Yes, ma'am.
Yes. I'm Joanne Basile.
Please.
Okay.
State your name and address, please.
I'm Joanne Basile. I live at 21 North Reeves Avenue. I live in Indian Cove, and I'm here because I'm the person who put forward Barbara Pine's name to rename the Daniel Avenue Beach. It's my beach. I drive by. I mean, it's not my beach. It's your beach. It's our beach. I'm sorry. It's our beach. We all pay for it. But I have the privilege of driving by it every day on my way home. And you all know Barbara. And Barbara, it was quite a remarkable person, I find. She did things that were well beyond what was being asked for her to do. She did things that had little to do with things that would benefit her personally. And for those of us who live in the area, it just seemed fitting to somehow have something to memorialize Barbara in a way that respected her and also talked to some of the things she did. She, along with Rick Maynard, really moved through the initiative in the town to allow some of our waterway areas to be available for our four-legged friends, who are a big part of our families. And Daniel Avenue Beach was one of those areas where that was allowed. So I'm asking the Board of Selectmen to follow through with the recommendation and concurrence of the Park and Rec Commission and rename the beach in her honor. And I overheard some of the conversation earlier by you and so on, and I think I was a little surprised. And hopefully Rick will be able to answer some of the questions you raised about procedure. And I don't know what to say, Carl, about what you said. So at any rate, I just hope that you will reconsider and name the beach after Barbara. She was a very fine woman, and it's also an opportunity to name something after a woman in this town as a Park and Rec, which we don't have many of. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the board on any agenda item? Seeing none, we'll move along. Item 3 is the approval of the minutes for August 7th, 2017, which was a regular meeting. Do I have a motion, please?
Second.
Motion made, second. Any addition or correction? Okay. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The minutes approved as presented. Okay. Okay. Item 4, Finance Director, Mary Jane Malavesi. 4.1, received the monthly reports from the Finance Director. I believe this is the final report, unaudited, for the month of June, which is the end of our fiscal year. Good morning, Mary Jane.
Good morning.
Okay.
Yes, I'm back to you today with updated numbers as of June 30 to see where we stand. We'll start with revenues. Revenues are all up to date, and we are just shy of $700,000 in additional revenues this year, mainly thanks to additional tax collection for prior years and just bringing in more percentage than we had anticipated. In addition, the fire department and the town clerk's office also brought in over $100,000 more than their budget. And that, again, I will reiterate, is on top of the reduction that we received in ECS of $171,000.
I think it's also worth mentioning that the building department exceeded their budget by in excess of $48,000, and that was due to some of the development going on in our town.
Yeah.
Okay? And also town clerk by $106,000.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Are there any questions on revenue for the finance director?
Okay, we'll look at expenditures. First thing I want to note is that we are still working with the Board of Education to balance to their numbers. So the number that I have reported here is the number we received from the Board of Education, where they their budget stands at the end of the year. Ours is slightly different, but we are working with them to bridge that gap, and we've been working on that last week. But so just so you know, that number, it has been adjusted from the backup. So if you look at the backup, the number is different. As far as the expenditures go, assuming the number of the Board of Education, we did spend 99.7% of the budget. I do have some transfers that we'll go over so that we can discuss the few overages that we have, but I didn't know if you had any particular questions that we haven't already discussed last month. So there are not too much change from last
So
month.
before we get to the transfers, the total, we have a surplus of rounded $801,000, is that correct?
Correct. I did include a memo
Yeah.
to that effect, which outlined how we got to that. Do you want to go over that?
It's the board's pleasure, sure. Okay.
So we are estimating at this point an $801,000 net estimated year-end surplus, made up of the expenditure and revenue budgets as we just discussed. We have a pending final transfer to the golf course. We have some unassigned fund balance transfers, which we will discuss at transfers. We still have a payment to the volunteer fire pension fund. I'd like to request a transfer from the unassigned fund balance to the reserve for personnel to cover some outstanding contract negotiations still. And we have some pending capital project purchase orders that we're working with department heads still in the estimate of $120,000, which brings our estimated surplus at approximately $101,000.
Okay. I think it's important to mention that on the expenditure side, we came very close to budget at $260,000, correct? All right.
Correct, and still out of that, the volunteer pension hasn't been transferred, so that
Right.
brings it down to 140.
Okay. And go into a third referendum last year. We were really, really tight.
Correct, many of the departments, if you look in the report, are very tight with their budgets.
Okay. And the other point I think we should mention is that had not the Board of Education received, help me with the numbers, was it 283 or 238?
280, yeah,
I think it was 280.
Yep.
In prior funds from the state of Connecticut, meaning prior years, they would have been really hurting.
Correct.
Because they only had a surplus of
$33,000.
$33,000. So when you hear around town that we had $1 million surplus and we could have trimmed the budget more, it's absolutely bunk. Okay, so we operated very, very close. And the reason we had even the $260,000 was there's various reasons. We had a very mild winter, and we had a tough winter like we had a couple of years ago. We would have had to hit our reserves. And departments like the police department was understaffed because of retirements. And the police officers we did hire were at a lower salary than the police officers that retired. So there were a lot of good luck we had, let's put it that way.
And we may need the surplus.
And we may need a surplus, because we don't know where the state is going to hit us, and we'll go over that later. Okay. So You know, we're in the silly season. We did not have $1 million surplus. We just about made it with a little bit of luck, as I said. Anybody else want to comment on that? No? Okay.
I just want to ask about the reserve for personnel. That's for
Contracts that
contracts
have not
that,
been
which
GA,
GEA.
GA, right?
Yeah.
GSA, and we're going to
Start
start
fire
firefighters.
okay.
Okay.
okay. We'll move on to transfers then, yes?
And just for clarification, that's because when they're negotiated, they may negotiate back to the end of the last contract, and therefore there may
Yeah,
be
retroactive.
some retroactive pay increases that are due.
Right, that's correct.
So we estimate a dollar amount for those.
One of those three is in pretty good shape and will be coming forward shortly.
Right. Actually, one is settled, we just kept the
Yeah.
Right,
Get
except
the
it didn't
language.
settle until,
Right.
until this fiscal year, so
Yeah.
we'll have to move that money ahead so that we can use it.
Yep.
Okay, so the next thing we have are transfers as of June 30, 2017. If you look on the left-hand side, you'll see that the finance department right off the bat, over budget by $2,700 is really, we had a considerable amount of consulting fees for the time that there were, as an interim finance director, and we were able to cover that most of that deficit with the savings in your new finance director. So, but not quite enough. So, so I have $2,700 there. Tax collector, very small. We upgraded her copier, and so it put her slightly over. Fire department replacement salaries is over 117. I'm sorry, the tax collector was only over $400. I didn't say that. Fire department over $117,000. Replacement salaries for vacancies. In the 2018 budget, we did bring that budget up to where it should be. It's been underfunded for a number of years, which is why we've seen that transfer. So hopefully we won't have that moving forward.
And I think it's important to mention that we had some, I think it's at least 2 workers' comp issues there that were very
Causes this,
costly.
yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Town properties, over by $37,800. It's the fire hydrant rental. I'm not sure if you remember during the budget that was not budgeted enough for the current costs that we were paying, so we anticipated being over by actually more than that, but that's where the bottom line came for that particular.
Did they raise the rates?
Yes.
Yes, and it wasn't anticipated in the budget, so by the time the budget was, it hadn't happened when the budget was done, so it made an effect for there. Debt retirement interest, $799,000. That's because we were anticipating the use of bond proceeds, so we underfund that because it comes in from the debt retirement, which you see on the other side. Reval again has its own reserve that we've put money aside for a few years, and so it was over budget this year. It comes in from the assigned revaluation fund balance to cover that. Human Services, over the $1,000 that we've been talking about month after month. It was a late submission from the fiscal year 16 budget that came in and was paid in 17, so they actually received 2 checks in fiscal year 17, put them over by that 1,000. And the Guilford Lakes Golf Course final transfer of $23,500 for a total of $1,030,300. And then on the right-hand side,
Where we're going to get the money.
we have some of our budgets with
Surplus.
with surplus money in it. The insurance line, we did very well in our insurance this year. We had $121,000 remaining. The legal line, $37,000, and the police, $84,000. Engineering and Public Works, $37,000. I'll say the police mainly because of, as you said, the changes in personnel. Engineering and Public Works, $37,000. Again, we had a fairly easy winter. Debt retirement principal, $370,000. This is money that we had set aside to cover some of the, from the proceeds of our bond refundings. Employee benefits, $90,400. The revaluation, the 48.9 coming in to cover the balance due on the reval, and 242,000 set aside from refunding for the Guilford High School, which the total also is the $1,030,300. So we're looking for a recommendation for the Board of Finance to approve these transfers.
I'll move them.
I'll second it.
Second? Motion made, seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
I have one more request for transfer. It's just like we were talking about the reserve for personnel, that we put the money aside for when the contracts are ratified. That did happen in fiscal year 17 for the police contract, so we are asking for a transfer of $86,455 out of the reserve for personnel and into the various salary lines to cover the additional amount needed in the fiscal 17 budget.
Okay, what was the amount again, please?
$86,455. You should have a memo from me.
Which actually approximates the surplus in the police department.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it kind of, except for a couple of grand, it kind of washes. I would move the transfers from reserve to personnel to cover the police salary costs.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. Is there any discussion? Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Thank you. Okay, Mary Jane, you want to
You want to do health?
the insurance, and then we can talk about the spreadsheet you put together for me on Friday.
Okay. So what I do have for July is the medical benefits account. I have a note at the bottom. The Board of Education. Let me back up. Our Milliman estimated savings for the Board of Education for their HSA, since they put in the HSA, and that's $1,059,905, for which the Board of Ed did in fact take that credit in their budget this year. So we've adjusted the expenditures and the revenue for that amount. So assuming that holds true, we should be okay. So if you look at my report here, so July we had claims of $1.9 million, although we're only budgeting $103. So we're really going to pay attention to this as we move forward. But on the other side, on revenue, we brought in $60,000 more than we had anticipated. So there's an offsetting between the two, which our projected surplus or deficit is a deficit of about $6,000 for the month, but still bringing our estimated fund balance at the end of the year to $3.5 million, subtracting out the incurred but not reported of $1,065,000, bringing us down to a projected net fund balance of about $2.5 million.
And this is carrying forward the 2017.
Yes, yes.
All right. Any questions? Okay, good. Okay. All right. Last week, we received a projection of where Guilford would be on the municipal funding if the governor were to continue on executive orders and the state legislature did not pass the budget by October 1. So I asked Mary Jane to prepare a schedule. I don't think she has those copies for all of us, but she can read it to us, where we would be actual versus budget on state funding. Took a quick look at it while I was flying home, and I think we would be $2.6 million short
Just-
in total. And maybe you can just, well, give copies after the meeting to the board, but you can just give us the detail, read the detail to us where we would be short.
Right,
Okay?
there are actually 5 lines in the state budget that have gone to zero. The equalized cost sharing, the ECS grant we get for the Board of Education, the pilot for colleges and hospitals, the Pequot grant, municipal revenue sharing, and the pilot for state-owned property.
Can you relist those with what the numbers
Oh,
were
certainly.
in our budget?
Yeah.
Yep. The ECS, we had, our adopted budget has $1,892,955.
And that's after
That's after
took
our,
a
the reduction.
35%
We took a
reduction
35%.
from the 2017 year on our own.
Right.
Yeah.
The pilot for colleges and hospitals is $10,711. The Pequot grant, which is commonly known as the casino money grant, is $25,668. Municipal revenue sharing, $657,644, and the pilot for state-owned property, $12,865, for a total of $2,599,843, just shy of $2.6 million.
Okay, and speaking with our state reps, I spoke to Sean, yesterday I spoke to him. He has been told by his leadership that they will be passing a budget, at least this is what they're told, by September 11th. So the conventional thinking is that the governor put this out to kind of kick the legislators in the rear to get to work. And that kind of goes in line with my letter that you all got, the way I felt, telling the guys to get to work and pass the budget, because this would be a big hit to the town of Guilford. Now, like I said numerous times, and I think you all agree, I know the Board of Finance agrees, and the Board of Education, that we pledge to taxpayers that we're not going to send out supplemental tax bills. We're one of the few towns that are not going to go back to the taxpayers. That we will adjust our budgets, we will use our reserves to mitigate whatever reduction in state funding is passed on to us. So we're going to do our best. But we're asking our state legislators to do their best to fight for the town of Guilford. And I'll do my best to work with them. So that's where we are right now. Okay, anybody? Thank you. All right, and you'll pass those out to the
I have
board?
the copies, yep.
Okay, oh, you do, okay, good.
No, I will.
Okay.
Did not.
So our next board meeting is still going to be before that
September
week that they
11th.
potentially.
Yeah. Right. Now, we usually don't get any funding from the state until after the first quarter of the fiscal year.
So the second meeting in September would be
Yeah.
still okay.
And then we'll have some sort of plan
Direction.
put together. Oh, we will have a plan of how,
If they do what they say.
right, and we'll work with the Board of Finance and the Board of
I'm
Education.
sure this morning or this week is going to be an eye-opener to a lot of our legislators.
Mhm.
They-
I mean, we're not the only
I
town.
spoke to them also this weekend, and some of them were surprised on Friday's developments.
Well, I don't know. It shouldn't have been a surprise because he's been telegraphing his feelings. And when I spoke to Senator Kennedy, I guess it was Monday before I left, Senator Kennedy wanted to get a little list from me of what we've done as a board and as a town and the hard choices we've made. And I said, I'd certainly give that to you, where I felt that the state has not done what Guilford has done, and in fact, many other towns have done, to work hard with our bargaining units and hammering out good labor contracts, and some efficiencies, and a lot of efficiencies that we've worked with to raise our credit ratings, to work in increasing our fund balance, which the state has failed to do. Like I think Sean had been quoted in the Courier saying, I think it was Representative Candelora, that said that the state employees are set for 2 years, they're getting their raises, and that the taxpayers, and increases, and they're guaranteed their jobs, and yet the taxpayers are being hanged out to dry. And that's not what we've done here. And like I said, the taxpayers in Guilford are not going to get a supplemental tax bill. The problem is going to be next year's budget, after we solve this problem. Anybody? Gary?
I agree with what you said. I've said this before, and it's premature until we find out what happens after September 11th, but I still think I would like the Board of Selectmen and maybe the Board of Finance to have a discussion about allocating parts of our surplus towards future capital projects and just getting that started, so that when we have to buy fire trucks, when we have to buy trucks for public works, that we've pre-funded them instead of going out to bonding. And it's ridiculous to talk about it till we know what the budget is, and I understand that, but we only meet every couple of weeks.
That's
So
right.
as long as we're talking about transfers, I just want to put that on the table. And I also think we ought to look at OPEB,
Okay.
some of the OPEB issues, and make sure we understand those and get those resolved. So whether we do it with a workshop or some form, before I leave this board, I'd like to have a realistic discussion about that.
I don't disagree with you, and unfortunately, the immediate need is
Absolutely.
is to fund the budget.
Absolutely.
Anybody else? Okay.
Can I ask one other thing,
Go right
which
ahead.
is just going through the finance? You can either discuss it as new business, old business, or here, because it took place at the Board of Finance. Where are we on the energy performance contracting proposal? Do you want to discuss it later
Well,
or here?
we can bring it up now.
Okay, because I know you and Mary Jane were at the meeting.
I was going to bring it up later.
Okay.
But I'm glad you brought it up now. Bill Bloss, the chairman of the Board of Education, him and I were trading calls last week, and I guess he wants to know where we stand, and I was going to bring it to this board's attention. I was going to ask this board if they would like to have another presentation like the Board of Finance had. They had another presentation from the consultants.
They had a second presentation?
They had a second presentation. You were at that meeting. I was away.
Was it similar or added information?
That I couldn't tell you because
were
that's the
at the
first
first
time I
one.
heard it.
You were at the first one.
Oh, okay, so I didn't, my point was, I was at the first one, I didn't hear about the second one, and I didn't know if it was supplemental or if it
Well,
was
the,
progress.
couldn't tell you that, I
the
didn't.
first one was,
Very general.
was a meeting or presentation attended by several boards, as you know, finance, education, selectmen, I think standing building, and whoever else wanted to be there. And getting 25, 30 people together was tough, so they had it over 2 nights. It'll be similar. Okay. And now we can bring them in here, and I think I'd like to have another presentation just for this board. That's my feeling, but I'm going to leave it up. See what the pleasure is of this.
Yeah, I'd like to see it with more specifics. I mean,
Okay.
the
Yeah,
first
it was
one was
very
the
high
first one was
level,
process.
general.
I mean, and I sort of understand the process, but I'd like that translated to, dollars and cents,
Right.
bricks and mortar, what does this mean?
Okay,
And some go, no-go points of decision and stuff
Right.
like that.
Right.
and I think in a smaller group, kind of geared to our questions and our focus, I think would be better. So I'll get that arranged. Okay?
Thank you.
Takes care of that. Okay. Anything else?
I have another item.
Go ahead.
We have a purchase order out for Munis Investment Assessment Services. It's an item we had budgeted in the last budget for Munis to come in and review all of our processes to see how our employees are actually using the software in the system. Board of Ed recently had this done. I expect to have them come in and really show us how we could better use the system. There's a lot of things that we could be doing, maybe shortcuts that we could be taking. Many of our employees have been just using the system for many years, and it upgrades, and maybe we don't know how to do some of the new things. And so I'm looking to have them come in for financials, our payroll, and HR. We're really bringing HR on board with this new go-around, and just to really have them sit down with our current employees one-on-one and show them, talk to the Munis people about what we're doing, show them what we're doing, and have them really help us. It really helped the Board of Ed side. They got a lot of value out of it. And so I'm here to request sole source to waive the bid process, obviously, because it is our current financial software. I do have a copy of the initial quote that was not attached to the requisition. So the quote is for $7,650, and the difference of $1,950 to make it, or actually, or I don't know if I got that right, but the difference is,
right.
okay, where's 19? I had 9,300 written in my notes. I didn't know if it's right. The difference is estimated travel. We do have to pay to have them come here and have them come over. It's a couple of days. It's It's actually a whole week's time that we have budgeted, so we do have to pay for them to spend the night. So the difference between the quote and the amount in our purchase order is just an estimate of that. So I'm asking for approval to waive the bid process for this as a sole source.
And this you have already, I assume, encumbered in 2017.
Correct,
Okay.
right. It's just one of the things that I haven't been able to get to.
So it's for us, for waiving the bidding
Correct.
process, not for the amount. Okay. Well, I'll move it then.
Okay, second. Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? I will say that we have a lot of money invested in the Munis system. It's been here we've used it for a long, long time. And it's got tremendous capabilities, and we're not using
Correct.
a
We're hoping
lot
to
of the
be able to do that.
capabilities.
And it was one of the initiatives we talked about when we brought Mary Jane aboard, too. So.
Correct, and we had it budgeted, and it's just something that obviously I didn't get to in the last few months, so we want to make sure we take care of that. We're hoping to do it over at Town Hall South as well. We're actually hoping to be able to use some of that same money over at Town Hall South. And as I said, with HR, we're bringing training in for HR so that we can do more there. We are bringing training in for our new purchasing person and the ladies that help with that. So we really want to make sure we're utilizing it to the best of our abilities.
Great. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, item 5, Parks and Recreation Director, Rick Maynard. I have a couple items. 5.1, consider and take possible action to accept a grant from the Department of Transportation for a wheelchair accessible vehicle for transportation for the elderly and/or persons with disabilities, and to authorize the first selectman to sign all necessary documentation for said grant. Morning, Rick. Morning,
Good
Terry.
morning.
Morning.
I want to mention we had a tremendous concert on the Green last night, about 1,000 people. And Gary, was that you dancing out there?
That was me. That was me.
About 200 people dancing. I'd never seen so many people dance at one of our concerts, and it was a good event. So thank you for allowing us to come and speak before you today. Terry's going to do most of the talking on this because she's filled out the grant application and has more of the information on it. But this is, through this state, it's a grant program that allows us to purchase a bus for 20% of the cost. And as you know, our senior buses are used extensively. The one that we're scheduled to replace has 118,000 miles on it. It's a 2006. So it's 11 years old. In the old days, when we used to lease the buses through the Greater New Haven Transit District, the recommendation from them was to replace them after 75,000 miles or 5 years. You traded them back in, and then you get another one. That program doesn't exist anymore, so it's a different program now. But based on that, we're way over the mileage and the number of years based on the old program. The Public Works guys have done a good job trying to maintain it and keep it in good shape, but it's at a point where it's got to be traded in. Those buses are used a lot. And so, again, this one has 118,000 miles, and it's about 11 years old right now. So, Terry, you have any specifics you want to talk about the grant and how that works?
The grant is Section 5310 program. It's a federal program that's funneled through the state, and it covers 20%.
80%.
I'm sorry, 80%, and it has a 20% match. So the estimated cost for a bus, we put in $68,000. So the grant we're requesting is $54,400. So we would have to come up with the match, which we have in $16,000. The direct for the bus is about almost $13,600 or $14,000, but there are other costs like a new radio. We'd have to install a radio and hook it into our system. So the additional is for those type of costs. In the letter, I think I told you the number of miles. We're approaching 50,000 miles a year that we put on all of the vehicles. And they're the three oldest ones. We have the 118, 87,000, and 81,000. So they're getting a lot of use.
Okay, I think this is great, but we have a wrinkle. I think I talked to you about it. We have a hold on capital expenditures out of the operating budget. We can accept the grant, and I'm going to propose this to the board, until we know where we are with the state budget. We're not releasing any dollars from the capital expenditure account, except for emergency vehicles or expenditures from the emergency service departments. So I'm going to propose this to you, Rick, is that you can fund or front the money out of your park and rec funds if you have to disperse the funds between now and when we can release the freeze. Okay?
Yeah.
And then we can reimburse your fund for it.
Yeah.
Or if this will take some time, then we can release the funds from the operating account down the road. I don't know what your timing is.
My understanding is it's a number of months before we actually
We
have
probably
to-
won't get the bus till next year.
Right.
It's almost
Okay.
a year process.
Okay.
It's just that the grant is to approve, to say, yes, we have matching funds, so we can go forward with
Okay.
this and not lose the chance of getting the grant.
Okay. So
We understand that.
you're okay with that? Okay. Is the board okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So that would be my motion, that I would approve this,
Okay.
that would be placed on hold, but if we have to pay for it before the freeze is lifted, the money would come out of the park and rec funds until the freeze is lifted. That's my motion.
Second that.
Okay? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Unanimous. Thank you. Good work, Terry.
Thank you.
Just
Nice
one
job.
question. Are there any charges that go with use of the buses?
That we charge the seniors?
Seniors?
No.
is it legal? Should there be a funding issue? Could we charge 50 cents a ride, $1 a ride to make this up?
Another grant that we get, which covers, there's a $44,000 grant that we also get that covers a portion of the bus driver hours and dispatch hours. That grant, any revenue we take in, that revenue would be subtracted out of that. So
Okay.
it'd end up nullifying it up to
Nullifying, okay.
$44,000.
Right.
So
Oh,
it really
one of the
doesn't make
conditions
sense.
of that is you
That
don't
one,
charge.
yes. If you do
What
charge,
is
then
the
you have to
policy
put
of
in
other
revenue.
towns?
Pardon me?
What is the policies of other towns?
I'm not aware of any town that
They don't have buses.
charges. No, they're the ones that do. I'm not aware of any town that actually charges for the service. I know
So
Madison
We
doesn't.
can't put a meter in there, can we?
We
Put a
do-
donation?
We do kind of rent it though occasionally, like Carl, you've done presentations at Stony Creek, and there are people that whatever club or group wants to go to that, we charge them for the use of the bus, the drivers and the gas mileage. So we do get some revenue back from that, and it goes back into the account. But it pays for the drivers really and gas.
Yeah,
So-
I don't want to make it into a profit center
No.
or anything like that, but, you know, it spends a day in Haven or something like
It would mess up that other grant, so it really wouldn't make sense.
that. I mean, yeah, it's just robbing from Peter to
Yeah.
pay Paul.
Like I said, good work. That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's great. All right, Rick, discuss and take possible action on a recommendation from the Parks and Recreation Committee to rename Daniel Avenue Beach in memory of Barbara Pines.
Okay, and also Sue Robbins is here too for the Parks and Recreation, so if there's any commission questions you have, Sue is here
Want to
also.
come up, Sue, or?
So you heard.
Always like
Joanne-
to see you. Good morning.
Joanne Basile, she spoke here this morning during the public forum. She came to the Parks and Recreation Commission meeting in August 7th and suggested we rename Daniel Avenue Beach to Barbara Pine Memorial at Daniel Avenue Beach, I think is how we stated it. The rationale for it is, I think there are a lot of reasons. Barbara was on the Parks and Recreation Commission for 8 years, vice chairman for a number of years. She was a real advocate for allowing dogs on that beach there. It's the only beach where they are allowed, which this body approved that. And she was just dedicated to improving recreation programs throughout the years and park improvements. She and Sue were on the subcommittee for the improvements at Jacobs Beach, and we know what a great, excuse me, great facility that is now. Sorry. And so in accordance with the policy on naming facilities and in parks that was developed a number of years ago, the Parks and Recreation Commission has authority, as you know, for all parks. But as far as naming things, they can approve benches and trees, and we've done a lot of those in different parks the commission has approved. But when it's something like a structure or a field, or like Ken Mulvey Field, Ralph Chapani Field at the high school recently was named for Ralph Chapani, those were recommended by the Parks and Rec Commission to the Board of Selectmen for approval. And so the Parks and Rec Commission unanimously approved at their meeting in August that we move it forward to you folks to see if you approve changing that name for Barbara. It's significant for a lot of reasons. I think Joanne touched on some of them, and I just mentioned all the reasons that the Commission approved it. But also, it's significant that Barbara lived there. I mean, that's not the overriding reason for it. But it is a beach that she always looked out on from her house. You could see it, and her husband now can. And there are few facilities that are named for women in town. The only ones I can think of are Ethel Maturo Field at the high school and Kyle Smith Pavilion at Jacobs Beach.
Adams Middle School?
Oh, yeah, sure, yeah. Well, that was way before my time.
Oh,
But as far as
thanks.
parks,
Thanks. Jesus.
as far as park
Yeah.
facilities, parks or fields, I guess I should say. Yeah. And that's, yeah.
He
that's-
threw him off his game, you know that.
Yeah, I know, you sure did.
Got your rhythm going.
That meeting only took 13 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
It was the best meeting I ever went to. To name Adams.
Yeah.
Well, to echo what Rick has just said, I was not here when Joanne spoke, so I'm sure we're we're duplicating probably what she also expressed, but the idea of being able to have an opportunity to add Barbara's name to the Daniel Avenue Beach because of all the reasons that have been stated. I personally worked with Barbara very closely on as co-chairs for the Jacobs Beach, again, water-related initiative and changes, which have been a wonderful accomplishment that Barbara has her name on. And this echoes a little bit of what she has accomplished through the Park and Rec and her timeless gifts back to the town through her volunteer work. So we come before you asking if you would approve the opportunity to memorialize her efforts in the town and to add another woman's name to a park facility, field facility.
I have a question. We're changing the name. It's like when we authorize Long Hill Field to rename it for Ken Mulvey. It was taken Long Hill, which is the name of the street.
Mm-hmm.
So we're taking Daniels. We're renaming it now. Who was Daniel? Something.
Well, I think we're adding, we're not taking the name Daniel
Okay,
Avenue Beach.
I want to be
It's
careful that we're-
incorporated, we're not taking that because
We're
that's
not-
an established name.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is the new official name?
Yeah.
Barbara
I
Pine
think-
Memorial Beach at
At
Daniel Avenue. Is that how we stated it?
And that's certainly not etched
Yeah.
in stone,
Okay.
but that was one that we came up with to incorporate both names so that we could keep the Daniel Avenue established name.
Do we know how it came about to be Daniels Avenue Beach?
I think it's just named after the road because it's Daniel
Is that it?
Avenue. I think that's it. Just like
Might have
Long
been
Hill
a
Park was after the
developer, might have
road.
named the road
I
and just
just
kept going.
want to make sure we're not erasing somebody else's.
Yeah.
No, that's
so
why we
it's-
wanted to make sure we kept
Okay.
the established name and not remove it completely. and
Get
turn it-
Joel involved in the historic.
Oh, he'll know, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the policy was created when we were dealing with McHenry Field at Nut Plains, because there was a softball field there that
Yes,
was named
correct.
for somebody prior. So we had asked the Park and Rec to develop a policy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Did the commission have the policy? Did they consider the policy
Yes.
as part of their discussion?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, we had a copy of that when we had the conversation.
As a matter of
Yeah.
fact, Rose Doster and I wrote this, established this, and then it was approved by the Park Commission. But under the guideline portion, it says the naming of structures, parks, fields, etc., will be for individuals who have had an impact on parks, recreation, or athletics in Guilford. The priority in the approval process will be to individuals who have volunteered for the Parks and Recreation Department and/or made significant contributions to the community. We all felt and unanimously supporting this request that Barbara surpassed all the requirements of the guidelines that we established in naming fields.
The only thing I might add is, there are another way of approaching this, because we don't have an ordinance on it or a Board of Selectmen policy. So it just throwing it out there, I mean, I have samples of much more detailed ordinances that other towns have adopted in order to provide more concrete guidelines for all of you when you're making these decisions. I'm not proposing that you should do that or not, but I'm just saying that's another approach, is to, if you're at all hesitant, is to adopt perhaps a meatier policy or ordinance that you'd be more comfortable with making these decisions. And that's the only thing I would add. They have, the Park and Rec has their policy, but there's nothing at your level.
But just a similar request was Ken Mulvey. We named it Ken Mulvey Field, which was approved by the Board of Selectmen.
Right.
When it was the same process. The Parks and Rec Commission made the recommendation, and the Board of Selectmen approved it. And so we were just following the same procedure we did with that naming.
And also
Okay.
Ralph Chapani for the Ralph Chapani baseball field.
Right.
Yeah, well, that never came to this board.
That might have been the Board of Ed, I think.
Oh,
That was
okay.
the Board of Ed.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So what is the proposed name?
The Barbara Pine Memorial Beach at Daniel Avenue.
There it is right here.
Again, that's not,
That-
etched in stone.
right.
That was one that we just put together to incorporate both names if you felt there was something that would be
Yeah, it's right here.
more
Yeah,
appropriate then.
It's in your memo here, right? If we vote on it, that's what you would want us to vote on? Okay.
Yeah. Unless there's another name incorporating both that you felt was,
I don't have a problem with that.
okay.
No, I don't either.
I would,
Make a motion?
well, I would just also say that outside of Park and Rec, I'm aware of other significant benefits that Barbara has made to the town, so as long as, my concern was I didn't see anything in your minutes referring to the fact that the commission had reviewed the naming policy.
Okay, we did,
Um,
yeah.
We did.
And as long as it was done consistently with the policy, which we had asked you to do, I would move that we accept the recommendation of the Park and Rec Department.
Motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made second. Is there any discussion? Call question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Rick, we got one more for you, I
Yeah.
think, believe. 5.3, just consider and take possible action on contracting with the company for the supplemental work / drainage on the new Guilford sod field at Guilford High. Now, we're not talking about the turf field here, right?
No, it's the sod field, it's the practice football field / lacrosse field. It's up there at where the old parking lot used to be. So the problem there is that there's a whole south side of the field, which is the sideline closest to the track, that side of the field. Almost the entire south side gets very, very wet. I don't know if you've repped any lacrosse games up
Not
there,
on
Gary,
that
but and there's a drainage issue there. When it rains hard, the water not only backs up on the sidelines, but it actually comes out to the field, and the field is squishy wet. And when we irrigate it, same thing. The north side of the field, that whole side, to get the proper water to irrigate it, we've got to have irrigation running there. If we shut the irrigation back, the north side gets very dry, and the south side stays wet. So it's a drainage problem. The water's not seeping down through. We think there's just a little bit of a lip almost. So the water's not running off the field. It's pitched that direction, so it's pitched the drain that way, and it just stops. It doesn't go anywhere. So it's a problem for groups that are using it because it gets very wet. The discus circle for the track team is right there, and when they were walking across, after throwing a discus to go get it on the field, they're walking through muddy areas on the field to get the discus. When we mow it, well, we can't mow it because we leave ruts. It's that bad. We did bring it to the attention back in the fall to the building committee, the high school building committee, and the field committee, and they started working on looking at it. They brought back the contractor in the spring. It might have been late fall, actually. He came and did some partial work, never really finished it, and from my understanding, he just kind of walked off and said, I'm done, I'm not doing it anymore. So the field committee, Paul Schmidt and John Kennedy met with, we solicited 4 quotes. We got 2 to do the drainage work there. And I was away on vacation when Paul and John met with the contractor. They walked the facility, did like a walk, so they understood what we're looking for. And so the base bid, we got 2, A&W for $29,355.22, and LaFada and Sons was $17,916. We think that's all we need to do, but we did get an alternate option in the event that there's a real problem with the pipe, that's a drainage pipe that's underground there. If it's clogged, or we'd have to remove it or replace it. So we did get that as an alternate. So the total price, if all it had to be done, A&W was $39,498.95. LaFada was $39,687. The committee, the field committee recommends going with LaFada asking this board to approve up to 39,687. We think we're only going to need the 17,916. We think that's all we're going to need. So it's, well within, under the bid amount. The problem is we just don't know about that pipe underground there. We think that it's okay. We just think the ground is so compacted. Like we tried aerating it with our own aerator, and we can only go in about 1 inch or 2 inches. We should be able to get 4 inches. It's just so hard, compacted. So we think that Malone McBroom wrote up the specs for this, and they believe that by removing the top layer of that compacted soil there, putting a 1/2 inch stone free draining material, and then just putting sod back over it, we think that's going to solve the problem. And the money for this, by the way, there's been conversation with members of the Bill Mulligan with the building committee, and they would pay for this out of the retainage that they kept back from the contractor who basically walked off, wasn't going to come back and do anymore. So the money's there from that.
That answers my question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but Rick, you're above the $25,000 threshold.
If the whole, we understand that,
I-
but we don't think we're going to need to do that.
Let me stop you. I think this has to go out to bid.
And I'll also just reemphasize that, as well as there's a lot of legal issues going on in everything you just described. So we ought to, just because Bill said we'll take it out of the retainage, we need to do that appropriately under the contract with proper notices. I got to
We
get
can't-
Ken involved.
Yeah.
Who wrote the spec for the original side? I mean, the contractor may have been following somebody's specs, so we may have
Yeah, the retainage
Malone and
may.
McBroom, we may be able to go after whoever wrote the spec. The contractor might argue.
And
we have a lot
They
of
did write the
moving
original
parts here.
too, yes.
And we might not have claim to
That
the
retainage.
retainage, so I would table this issue.
Yeah, it needs
No,
a little
I'm not
more.
even table, I would just take it off the agenda.
And I'll consult Jeff D'Onofrio on the contracts. and
So should I
gather
work with
more
Pam then to
information.
kind of get those things sort of
Yes.
ironed out?
Yes.
Get it sorted
Yeah,
out.
so if the
Yeah.
board agrees,
Yeah.
we just not take no action on this issue.
And just so you understand, the bottom line is that when we knew this was happening back in the fall, and I made it very clear, I don't want this to become a Parks and Rec town problem.
No,
because
it
of
shouldn't.
the drainage problem.
It's a building committee
Yeah.
issue.
So we want to be sure that money still comes out of that.
That's right.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Pam will solve it for you.
Okay.
What did the bidding cost last
Okay,
45.
time? Is that typical for those groups?
Yeah,
They're very good.
okay, item 6, Shoreline Arts Alliance, Benita Rooney and Senator Meyer. How you doing? Discuss and take possible action to send a letter of support for the board, from the board, for the purpose of a regional cultural center project. Good morning, Benita, how are you?
Honorable Selectman, Ed Meyer. I'm chairman of the board of the Shoreline Arts Alliance. And as an aside, I wish the state legislature worked as cooperatively as this board. It's a pleasure to see it.
Thank you. Likewise.
You have before you a letter that would come from the Board of Selectmen to the National Endowment for the Arts. I'm going to give you a revision of that that has the proper address of the
Okay.
National Endowment of the Arts. There's another copy.
Is all the other wording the same?
Yes.
I'm not-
Otherwise, it's exactly the same.
I'm not going to prepare the letter, Joe.
No, we'll just give it to the clerk. Okay,
Good. So the National Endowment for the Arts has got a program, a grant program called Our Town Grant. And that Our Town Grant program by the NEA requires coordination between a town and an arts sponsor. The Shoreline Arts Alliance and its board, and one of our board members is here today, by the way, Steve Copps. The board is very committed to creating an unusual regional arts center. This will be an arts center that will cover visual arts, performing arts, culinary arts, and healing arts. And we're talking to hospitals about a whole healing art curriculum for the center. It'll be an expensive project, and what the National Endowment for the Arts will give us, hopefully, is $100,000. The Alliance will be required to match that 100,000 with another 100,000. And we seek your support for this with this kind of letter that the rules of the NEA require the town to be on board. You know, we've had a great relationship, the Shoreline Arts Alliance has had with Town of Guilford since 1980 when we were created. We just finished, our Shakespeare. We had over 5,000 people come. We did The Tempest. It was a very big success. And so the coordination between the town historically and the Shoreline Arts Alliance has been great. And we'd love to have you support us in this endeavor.
How many towns are involved?
There are 24 towns under the jurisdiction of the Shoreline Arts Alliance.
From where to where?
We go as far upstate as Middletown, and then we come
Further, all of Middlesex County, and then East Haven to East Lyme along the shoreline.
Anita, you want to add anything for the senators?
Just so that you understand, I mean, Ed said it's a very expensive project. This part of it is really for the design and planning, not
Okay.
for the actual construction. And so it just requires a collaborative partnership with the town, with the municipality, and there's not a financial obligation, but simply that you are on board and participating and working with us to make this happen.
Brian McGlone, by the way, has been a marvelous help
So
with us.
you basically are already doing it. I mean, we're, in every
Yeah,
step
right,
we
yeah.
take is through with the town engineers, with planning and zoning, and with economic development, so
So
it doesn't
what
really
you need
change.
today is for us to vote to adopt this letter and
Yes.
For us to
And
allow
send
us
it
to
out on
proceed.
your letterhead.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, we'll do.
I'll make that motion.
Oh, second.
Second, motion made, seconded. Is there any discussion?
Just, is this facility-based or is this multi-facility? I mean, is this a concept in an organization that works under multiple facilities, or is your goal to ultimately have a Shoreline Arts Alliance building or something?
What we're looking at is a campus-style operation where there would be one or more auditoriums, there'd be classrooms, there'd be meeting rooms and administration. And Brian McGlone, as I mentioned before, is introducing us to properties here in Guilford that could accommodate a campus-style approach to it. It's a major project. We're looking at, $10 to $20 million here.
Okay, so you ultimately would go to a physical facility,
Definitely going to a physical facility.
which could be anywhere in the 24 towns.
It could be. We, the board, have selected Guilford. We have had long roots with Guilford, and we'd like to be with Guilford. And so we looked at Madison briefly. We've had offers from Branford and North Branford, but we're focusing right now on Guilford.
Any other comments, questions, discussion? Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Tracy, you have this, so Karen can put on letterhead. And we'll just have to call you for your signatures on this, that's all. We can arrange it somehow. Okay, item 7, appointments and resignations. We have one, act on a resignation from Len Procoda from the Economic Development Commission. Do I have a motion, please?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, with regrets, please. Item 8 is the request for the use of town properties. I have 8.1 to 8.4.
I would move that we approve the uses of town property as listed in the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Correspondence, I forward all of you the correspondence from Secretary Barnes from OPM. It wasn't quite a Christmas card, but I can send it over. That's all I have. Committee reports, do we have any old business? We did discuss the energy performance, and we will arrange that. Okay?
I would just add one thing. We talked last time with the police chief about the issue of carbon monoxide in the cars. There
Yeah.
happened to be some articles. There was an article in the Current because other towns are having this issue, and it specifically referred to our vendor who does not drill, says he does not drill holes in order to provide, but uses existing conduits that are manufactured by Ford, and therefore it shouldn't be an issue. So both Charles and I were concerned about
Yeah.
that, and I think, and I talked to Jeff afterwards, who is on top of it. He gets reports, but
He is.
I think the fact it apparently comes from those vendors that just drill holes in the floor, and our vendor does not do that. So that's comforting, I guess, to
And like you
understand.
said, the chief is on top of it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, my congratulations to the police department on apprehending the thief that we have running around town and burglarizing our
I was, along with that, I was so pleased to read about all the cooperation between the fire department and other towns and the state police.
Oh, yeah.
and-
Right.
I mean,
Busy day.
Yeah, it's a lot of mutual aid, yeah. It was a busy day. And
I also found it amusing that the New Haven Register didn't even see fit to have any reports on it until about 3 or 4 days later.
Yeah, it was a little slow on the uptake. I don't think they have a report that covers Guilford.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have any bad news, so maybe that's why. Public forum, limited to
Are we going to rename the fairgrounds after the airplane?
the biplane.
Biplane crash?
That's how my day ended. Public forum, limited to 3 minutes on any subject. No one? Okay, thank you. Before we adjourn, I want to thank Selectman Haverda for covering for me for a couple of days while I was away. As you noticed,
My pleasure.
What was that?
My pleasure.
Oh, your pleasure, okay. As you notice, he signed the agenda, thank you very much. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you, everybody.
Joe, did you or will you sign